Joining me today is Dr. Wayne Lesperance, Professor of Political Science at New England College. And you're my go-to expert on everything political here. And the last races I want to talk about are the CD races.
Sure.
I am most interested in CD2 because that's where most of our coverage area is. With our very good partner TDS, we were spreading out throughout the state. So I need to cover a little bit about CD1.
Sure.
You know, they're a very community-minded partner, and they're spreading throughout the state. But the bulk of our audience is in CD2,
Sure.
so let's start there.
So CD2 is shaping up to be an interesting race. We have Jim Lawrence emerge as the Republican nominee for the 2nd Congressional District, taking on an incumbent, Annie Kuster, Representative Kuster, somebody who did not get primaries. So she has kept her powder dry, has been able to save her campaign funds. Now that we're pivoting to the general election, we'll see how aggressively she goes. The interesting dynamic in this race is that Annie Kuster's negatives, the polling number tell us that she's not very popular with voters in her district. So you would think that would make her, you know, a target, a real shot here for a challenger to defeat her. We were in the same position 2 years ago, though, when Mary Linda Garcia was the nominee. And once the general election begins, voters tend to solidify behind one party or the other. So we'll see how that all plays out. But that's the way that race is shaping up. We haven't heard very much at all from Annie Kuster. She's been really focused on doing constituent service, doing public appearances, but really nothing that feels like campaigning in the sense that what we've seen from the primary candidates.
And do you think that'll change?
Oh yeah, it has to change. I mean, she's going to be invited to participate in debates. I would assume she will do that. She'll certainly be pushed by Jim Lawrence and his supporters to engage on a variety of issues. There are some clear differences. Lawrence is a conservative's conservative. So certainly he is someone that's going to be pushing her on any number of questions where he wants to draw sharp differences. And I think she'll do the same.
So talk to me about Lawrence. He ran in a primary, lost to Garcia,
Right.
ran again, won. Is he a more experienced candidate because of this?
Well, anytime you've had the opportunity to go through a primary process, you know, you learn things, and I think you can look at his campaign now and look at the one that he ran last time, and you can note that he picked up a few important lessons, not the least of which he hired a very, very smart political operative here in New Hampshire and their team to help manage his campaign. In fact, it's the same guy that's running Donald Trump's campaign here in New Hampshire, same team. So he's clearly learned that running for Congress isn't something you kind of can just do. You really have to assemble a crack team, and he's done that. He's been able to raise some money. That's been a challenge for him. But certainly they're going to, now that the primary is over, be able to draw from larger Republican coffers. I think you can look at his campaign and fairly say they've learned some lessons. Whether it's enough to get him over the top, we'll see. But he's making progress, that's for sure.
Well, in CD2, as I look at it, is a little more moderate. And maybe liberal.
Yeah, I would probably go further than moderate.
Okay. Trying to be neutral here on this, but
Sure.
I'll use your words.
Okay.
It's a liberal district. It's certainly liberal for New Hampshire.
Compared to CD1, definitely. It leans more left.
So the Republican challenger is the more conservative, as
Sure.
you stated earlier. What does he have to do to win in a more liberal district?
He's got to convince voters it's not so much an ideological path to victory. He's not going to win that argument. But what he can do is convince voters that, as he has been saying all along, that Washington is broken. The folks that are currently serving in Washington, like Annie Kuster, are part of the problem, and he represents a new way forward to try to fix all the things that are failing in our national government. So I think it's a rejection of incumbency that he's trying to do, not really so much ideology.
Is that a narrative that's going to work in this district? Because she's going to talk about the things she's done for the district.
Sure, but I think that's the only path he has, because
Okay.
he can't win an ideological battle. And I think if you look at the success of Bernie Sanders and if you look at the success of Donald Trump, there's something to this outsider approach. So let's see if Jim Lawrence can tap into that magic.
Well, I said we'd talk about CD1. We got about 30 seconds left. Highlight the rematch from the rematch from the rematch from the rematch.
Right.
This is how many times have they competed against each other?
This will be the third go-around, right?
Okay. Will it be different?
I think it'll be probably one of the most acrimonious debates we're going to see in the state, because there's a lot of bad blood between those two. Carol Shea Porter believes that Frank Ginta lied about her record lied about his own campaign finance issues in the last go-round, and is comfortable using that word, lied. I think that they're going to mix it up pretty good. Frank Ginta has shown to be remarkably resilient. A year ago, all of us would have written him off and said he's finished because of the FEC troubles he had. And he has shown, doing it the old-fashioned way, he has shown that he can overcome those obstacles. And what I mean by that is Frank Ginta has tripled down on constituent service. That's sort of the old school way of courting votes, is to really be a public servant. And whether you like him or not, you've got to give him incredible credit for having done that really well.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that sort of what we want?
That's exactly what we want. That is what the role of a congressman is supposed to be. And so many of them get away from that, but he has really gone and embraced that role, and I think he's done it to his credit.
Well, I wish we had more time to talk about this race, because I think it's going to be interesting, but we are out of time. Wayne, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Capital Connections, your weekly access to politics and policy along the I-89 and I-91 corridors and how it impacts your life in our region. If you've got a comment or an idea for a future show, why don't you send me an email? But in the meantime, please join us again at the same time next week for another edition of Capital Connections.